I'm desperate for our country to be united in condemnation of the actions and the ideas that killed my friend. I want it so badly that I will tell you a difficult truth. We can only have it with people who acknowledge that political violence is unacceptable, and when we work to dismantle the institutions that promote violence and terrorism in our own country. But you have a role too. Civil society, Charlie understood this well, is not just something that flows from the government. It flows from each and every one of us. It flows from all of us. So when you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out, and hell, call their employer.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. We are seeing the death of free speech in America in real time. It doesn't begin with laws banning free expression. It begins with the kind of intimidation now coming directly from the White House. This tirade delivered by the vice president specifically targeted funders like the Ford Foundation that support pro-democracy media organizations. But it did something even more sinister. It called upon Americans to rat out their neighbors, their coworkers. That is the society that J.D. Vance and the MAGA movement he hopes to inherit is pushing for. I'm not confused here. I know that businesses have a right to dismiss employees for unprotected speech. But what J.D. Vance and the Trump regime are advocating for is a nation of informants. That mindset shift is far more dangerous than any legal regime the government might try to impose. So, I want people who are ambivalent about these threats to the First Amendment to understand that in every society that has abandoned liberalism for the allure of the strongman, it starts with things like this. It doesn't begin with draconian laws. It starts with intimidation, with people self-censoring out of fear. I spoke with Kris Goldsmith about this. As the founder of Veterans Fighting Fascism, he will almost certainly find himself in the government's crosshairs if he isn't already. In part one of our conversation, we talked about the implications of the Trump regime declaring Antifa a terrorist threat. In the second part, we talk about the harassment and intimidation campaign that is now underway and how J.D. Vance is being positioned to inherit the extremist MAGA movement. Here's part two of our conversation. And one thing I want your take on is the mechanics of that. Like we jump straight to the concentration camps and the knock on the door in the middle of the night, because that is already happening to some of our fellow citizens and neighbors, especially undocumented immigrants. That is real in America today. But there is another insidious feature to the kind of authoritarian backsliding that we are experiencing, and it is the non-kinetic levers of government. It's the IRS audit. Mm-hmm. It's the investigations that make life really, really difficult. It's the FBI showing up at your house with a search warrant and trashing your office. That kind of thing has a real chilling effect, and it's having it already. I go on conservative radio once a week, and for the first time ever, I find myself checking my words because I wish I didn't, but it is a natural reaction to this climate of censorship and fear and the attack on the First Amendment, because who knows who's going to report you to the government. I think it was J.D. Vance in that Charlie Kirk guest host appearance who said, start ratting on your neighbors, right?
Yeah. I keep hearing and using the phrase like it's like they're taking a page out of the authoritarian playbook, and it keeps becoming more and more literal and transparent and I hope easy for the average person who hasn't studied authoritarian movements to understand. I mean, I grew up watching the History Channel. I could have never read a book, and I would understand that when the vice president of the United States is going on broadcasting from the White House on a partisan political podcast and saying that people need to start ratting out their neighbors, I would understand, wow, that looks a lot like fucking Nazi Germany. I think that's pretty disturbing. And for that to come from a Yale Law School educated combat veteran, J.D. Vance, makes it, I think, all the more disturbing, because he is doing and saying these things deliberately. You know, you and I have discussed J.D. Vance and the unique threat that he poses quite a bit. And I think that the average political pundit, talking head, political commentator looks at J.D. Vance and goes, that man will never inherit the MAGA movement once Trump dies of old age or whatever happens to Trump. But J.D. Vance is a chameleon. That is the way that he's been described by his friends and colleagues. He can completely contort himself, not just adjusting his personality, but the way that he speaks, the way that he presents himself to an audience, the way that he communicates. And he is embracing the role of Joseph Goebbels, going onto a radio station and talking for 2 hours nonstop. That is a skill set that most people have to develop. And J.D. Vance is already there. And I have no doubt that should he become the next president, which is the way that I think things are looking if the Trump and Vance White House get their way, he will continue to do that podcast, and he will continue to urge Americans to narc on one another, to rat on one another, to betray one another.
We had J.D. Vance's roommate from Yale Law School on this show who described him exactly as you did. He adjusts to whatever room he's in. Hey everyone, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say just how grateful I am for all of your support for this channel and for this show. We have a big reporting trip coming up to Ukraine. I could use your help. We have to cover the film crew, interpreters, fixers, security. It's a whole thing, but it is worth it to be able to share with you and others what is actually happening on the ground there. I just published a feature story in The Atlantic about my last trip, where I embedded with the drone unit at the front. Click the link below for the full article, and we'll be putting out more great fact-based reporting over Substack. Please consider subscribing. Everything I make from Substack and Patreon goes back into this show. Thanks for the help. And this is the point I want to make. He is having to go the extra mile to win over the MAGA movement. He is even more extreme than the president, than the people around him, because he needs to win their trust as an Ivy Leaguer, as someone who codes elitist. And I think that makes him even more dangerous, given how desperate he is for their support and how much he has to prove.
I agree. And he seems to have a very cozy relationship with Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller leads policy for this White House. I don't think that a President J.D. Vance would have any difference in terms of policy proposals from the Trump White House, but it would have someone who is leading with more strategic leadership than they currently have. Donald Trump is an authoritarian, but he's also completely irrational. He's easy to provoke. He's easy to distract. And that has, as bad as things have gotten, it is part of the reason that he hasn't been able to go as far as he otherwise could. J.D. Vance, while he may not be as engaging and as entertaining as Donald Trump, he is very intelligent. He is meticulous, and he has the backing of billionaires who, frankly, don't like Donald Trump at all, and control a lot of levers of power when it comes to things like surveillance and communications, social media, traditional media. And if they're completely aligned with J.D. Vance, I think that the power that they can wield is something that we haven't experienced yet. Now, one of the things that I think that a lot of people who push back against me when I use the term Nazi, they say like, oh, well, they're not swastika flying neo-Nazis or whatever. When you start to see the government overlapping with industry, as we have seen with the Jimmy Kimmel firing, as we've seen with these media conglomerations basically forming alliances to do Trump's bidding, the term National Socialism gets harder to say that it's not appropriate. I'm not saying that we have a Nazi government right now, but I am saying that is one of the core Nazism is not just about genocide. It is not just about the Holocaust. Nazism is an economic political machine. And we, the United States, are becoming more like that in ways that I think that I haven't heard enough political commentators or authors or journalists discussing openly and honestly.
We might not have a Nazi government yet, but it feels like we have, to your point, a national socialist government. I mean, look at the stake that Donald Trump coerced out of Intel. Look at the negotiations around TikTok right now. That is the kind of socialism that would have set conservatives' hair on fire if Obama or Biden or anyone else did it. It is a nationalist, populist government, and it is one with really alarming socialist tendencies, ergo National Socialism. And I'm not going to tell you how that spells in German, but yes.
Yeah. And you look at things like the TikTok deal, which may not matter to most Americans, but if it weren't for TikTok, my voice would not be getting out there in the way that it currently is. Yes, it's a Chinese app, and yes, there are security vulnerabilities, but I don't fucking trust Elon Musk. And I don't trust fucking Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg collaborated with fucking, Breitbart's like most effective propagandist in history, Steve Bannon, to help Donald Trump become president by manipulating Americans' emotions by Cambridge Analytica, right? That people may not remember that, but look up Cambridge Analytica. Like Steve Bannon was manipulating Americans who were taking stupid Facebook quizzes to build personality profiles so that the Trump campaign could project messaging along with organizations like Breitbart to manipulate people into a fear-based politics, which is what helped build the MAGA movement, right? So I don't give a shit that the Chinese own TikTok because Mark Zuckerberg has a worse track history when it comes to interfering with Americans' psyches, politics, and elections, right? So let's set that baseline. I have a verified profile. I have over 250,000 followers. I am able to rally people to do things like start anti-fascist book clubs so that they can start locally organizing. Well, this supposed TikTok deal where they're going to create an American version where there's going to be a unique algorithm is going to have a board member that comes from the United States government, from the Trump government, on a private company that is going to be shaping its algorithm in a way that the Trump government approves of. That sounds like nationalized socialism to me. and that's my app, right? That's the app that I use the most effectively to get my voice out. The second one is Substack. Now I know that Hamish McKenzie, the founder of Substack, has been saying, "Oh, you can join Substack and they can never take your audience away. You get their emails, you can contact them directly. You just use a different platform." Hamish McKenzie has some of the same Trump-aligned investors in his company that are going to be taking over TikTok, who are going to be collaborating with a now statutorily mandated or regulatorily mandated, I don't know how to refer to the way that this deal is happening, that is going to put a Trump White House official on their board to shape their algorithm. If Hamish McKenzie thinks that that's not going to happen to Substack too, my other second most effective platform, he's delusional. And I don't know what I'm going to do after that because I can't afford to print newspapers and mail them around the country on my own, right?
Yeah, I mean, what they want is to leave us with nothing but phone trees and smoke signals. I mean, they're really going after the lifeblood of organized resistance, which is communications. They're starting with the soft censorship of Kimmel and others to intimidate the rest of us, but they're going to come after the infrastructure as well, guaranteed. Kris, we're going to leave it there, but always great to have you on, and let's check in again real soon.
Thank you, brother.